Hello, Internet people, and welcome to yet another edition of the Hardline According to Stonefruit with my partner, Mark French. How you doing today, brother?
Hey, great. How are you?
I'm feeling fine, feeling fine. The previous edition looked at the speech that Obama gave at Stanford on disinformation, and we looked at it as a case study in a master at work in creating in perpetuating the ideology of neoliberalism as a uber technocrat. And now we can look at a lower level technocrat, Nina Jankowicz, who on April 27th, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas appointed to the new Disinformation Governance Board. Now, this has certainly taken up a lot of oxygen since then, so we're not timely on the incredibly fast news cycles that are running through our popular culture at the moment, but she remains worth examining, and the strategy, and more largely speaking, it remains worth examining the broader strategy of how they're trying to fuck with all of us truth tellers in various and sundry ways.
Sure.
And one of my favorite broken clocks, Tucker Carlson, was spot on. And for once, his default expression finally was entirely appropriate for the material. And for me, his default expression is something of a cross between a gelatinous, pigment, and bone free sea creature found 20,000 leagues beneath the sea.
Mm-hmm.
And a dog who's just been shown a card trick, shout out to Bill Hicks, and a passive aggressive human reaction to an offensive smell. And it finally served him very well, indeed, reacting to the video. So horrifying that once seen can never be unseen.
That's right.
I'm, of course, referring to her trotting the boards and singing Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. But we don't need to make our listeners suffer for yet another repetition of that.
Sure.
But when I heard she was appointed, I wanted to know who she was. And I went and looked at a video of her book, which is How to Lose the Information War. And I saw a talk she gave to an Australian defense think tank. And I had my pad and my pen out and everything, and I was ready. And I wrote this list of all of the disinformation efforts that she had been a part of. And then I realized she's been a part of everything, all of them. So all of them of the last several years, at least.
Which is quite impressive for someone that's 32 years old.
She started early. I think
Yeah.
No one beats Obama as being a genial and intelligent neoliberal uber ghoul.
Sure.
But we have to give Jankowicz Rookie of the Year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I have found that Glenn Greenwald's take on her is as sufficient as any.
Good.
And his thumbnail description of her was as a completely deranged resistance cartoon freak.
Yeah.
Which I think is appropriate.
Yeah.
And then he summarized my reaction to her because I really wanted to see what her bona fides were as a certified PSYOP specialist. But
That's right.
Greenwald captured it when he tweeted that it is genuinely hard to find a single democratic or media disinformation campaign and conspiracy theory that she did not ratify and spread.
Right.
And then, I got to get me. Well, let's pause on Brian Stelter's reaction, because this is a juicy little sentence I drew up, because all of this can be found at stonefruit.substack.com. And a lot of people think that her appointment to this board was the Biden administration's reaction to the purchase of Twitter by Elon Musk. But I don't think it was. I think it takes a few months for someone like Obama to get a speech scheduled. I think it takes a few months for government to create a board like this. But I think for sure that those two were reactions of the powers that be to the fact that there are holes in their disinformation governance regime.
That's right.
But I don't think, and here's the snappy phrase, I don't think we witnessed a Hegelian dialectic of thesis, antithesis, and resolution at the speed of social media. The dragon of free speech absolutism, brave knight Sir Barak, offering common sense limitations on free speech, and the dragon vanquished by the formation of a new governmental body. No, but the powers that be were putting this into play for at least a few months now, I would imagine. But jumping back to Stelter, useful idiots Monday morning fan favorite when they look at the Sunday news shows. Did you get your fix of the Monday morning yet today, Mark?
I didn't because it didn't have Katie. So dealing with Monte and special guest, I shoved them aside, and I'll have to get to it later, actually.
Well, it is always tasty.
Yeah, certainly.
And a few weeks ago, they had on fan favorite Brian Stelter, who I continue to affirm is merely an egg with Sharpie features drawn upon it.
Yeah.
And what he said was, this has been mostly a Fox World story, because he was trying to frame it as purely right-wing hysteria only.
Right.
It's a lot of right-wing uproar. I mean, the board, it sounds like common sense, but when I Google it, all I see is Joe Biden's Ministry of Truth. And I think what our listeners may be appreciating is that that is the function of people like Stelter, who's the media critic of CNN, for goodness sakes, is that media is to present the disinformation to us as news. But people that see right through it, like Greenwald,
yeah,
he tweeted of Stelter's appearance, the level of historical ignorance, sheer stupidity, and corporate serving malevolence required to believe the US security state is trying to combat disinformation rather than aggressively spread it is so extreme that no words in the English language suffice to describe it.
That's right.
So I believe Stelter as a representative of big media, Nina Jankowicz and Obama as representative of DNC Democrats are two of the five consortia that are creating this disinformation governance regime for us. The other three sectors would be big tech, intelligence, quote unquote,
yeah,
and academia.
Yeah.
And they're worried because the information is widely available and instantaneously available with the proliferation of smartphones and high-speed internet. So far, it takes some initiative. You have to know where to look. So instead of overt censorship, which we looked at the national security, national senior intelligence officials' letters that big tech worked with those types of people to lobby against their antitrust, to be their antitrust warriors in DC. Those letters and the general attitude of big media, big tech is that overt censorship is so horrible when Russia and China does it. But those five sectors are already doing it in a different way.
Yeah.
And here's what I see as their overall strategy. So I hope our listeners can really take this part to heart and use it as a decoder ring to look at other episodes of disinformation being foisted on us as the news.
Sure.
Is that those 5 sectors, they let loose a decentralized array of intelligence cutouts, partisan hacks and attack dogs, dubious fact checkers, Beltway bubble access journalism aspirants, a huge infrastructure of partisan nonprofits, often fueled by massive Democrat dark money, funding to disparage truth tellers as conspiracy theorists, Russian disinfo agents, Putin bots, and the like, to demonetize, expunge, and unsubscribe from their anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-war content and sites, left and right. Because I'm an anarchist, I'm a lefty, but they're doing this to the right wing. They're just doing it to anti-establishment people.
Yeah, Josh Hawley, who I disagree with on almost everything of any substance, he grilled Mayorkas over this a couple of days ago. I mean, he pointed out very clearly that Nina Yankovic was only going to go one direction when it comes to pointing out misinformation. And like a broken clock, that was one time that day that he was right.
Yeah. And Marjorie Taylor Greene has been getting a lot of support from the anti-war people when she's saying there's $40 billion for Ukraine and no baby formula for American mothers and babies. And she was treating it like fixed-based oral poetry. She would call out some negative aspect of war fever in DC, and no baby formula for American mothers and babies.
Sure.
But to get back to their central strategy, it's also to monkey with the likes and dislikes and the comments, often to hide them, and to keep all of that content and those sites at the mercy of users of creatively interpreted terms of service. And especially, and this is why algorithms should be open source, I believe, they use their proprietary algorithms to bury anti-establishment websites left and right. Hedges has spoken on this at some length, and Common Dreams, Truth Dig before that folded because the owner wouldn't let them unionize, and a lot of lefty sites have seen their rankings just plummet and their readership plummet because the algorithms are hiding them. So specific users and websites can get booted off of platform, or even entire platforms can get thrown off of the internet architecture, like Parler.
Right.
Or, and we've seen numerous examples already, just confiscate their money on fintech platforms.
Yeah.
So that is, as I see it, Stonefruit, the overall goal of how they're running their disinformation governance regime right now. So I see Nina's role. I'll call her Nina. Use the first person or use the first name.
Sure.
The role of the Ministry of Truth is to keep a global eye on this flotilla of swarming PSYOP PT boats. And I think she's going to be offering intelligence and targeting instructions for them.
Yeah, and it even goes beyond that. I mean, they are already headed towards social scores and shutting people's money off. This has already happened repeatedly, of where they are freezing your funds and stealing your money. It really is the sanctions model right down to the micro individual citizen level. I mean, that's, I don't think people are understanding how slippery of a slope this is and how dangerous and wrong this is. I don't see what's democratic about this at all.
Yes, and I think it betrays a real desperation that the powers that be have,
I would
because
agree with that.
they know that this is the last thing they have before mass incarceration of
Mhm.
people who, what Orwell calls, would say, have wrong think.
Right.
And as this is an attempt to take us a step back from the news cycle and look at how ideology operates and what they're trying to do to us, you pointed to taking yet another step back to the fact that this is part of a larger matrix of control that will probably evolve into social credit scores and digital money. And then we can take that yet another step back, that this is their last and most important effort to preserve the entire Bretton Woods monetary system and post-World War II system, the liberal world order, small l liberal, which is not liberal anymore because free speech and free thought and democracy are all gone. But
Sure.
until we investigate what the liberal order is, that will do as a shorthand. So all they have now is blue anon for the DNC side,
Yeah.
and I I think that's it. Uh, but it's not going to last. It's not going to be exclusively the province of Democrats forever, because at the end of the day, the big tech is just a business
That's
and
right.
is only concerned with money. So when
Money
the
and power. That's it.
the Republicans take control of both chambers of Congress,
It's not that far away now. I mean, it's coming. You're talking what, 4 more months or whatever?
just it'll shoot by in a blink of an eye, and then they'll have
Yeah.
Congress and the Senate, and I don't see how they can retain the presidency at all.
They
Biden's
aren't going to. He's going to be a complete lame duck.
Yeah. So they're not protecting us from disinformation. They're
Right.
spreading it in a more coordinated fashion through the board for specific political and economic objectives. And I think the powers that be are so worried because the people are hungering for the truth and impartial sources of information. And I think a clear indicator of that are all the people that have jumped from more institutional or corporate homes to Substack. We can just rattle off a couple. Matt Taibbi from Rolling
Sure.
Stone,
Yeah.
uh, Glenn Greenwald from The Intercept, which unfortunately was adversarial to power when it was the repository of the Edward Snowden revelations, but has become a plaything, an aspirant to DNC, corporatist democratic approval. But
Yeah.
here's something I've been thinking about, Mark, and I've never seen it spoken of anywhere. The Intercept is funded by eBay billionaire Pierre Amodiar,
Uh-huh.
and the platform, The Intercept itself, was created as Glenn Greenwald and his partner were curating and reporting on the Edward Snowden leaks.
That's right.
To the best of my knowledge, they have physical custody of the Snowden leaks. So was the creation of the Intercept an attempt by Pierre Omidyar to maintain control over the actual data of the Edward Snowden links? Because only a few percents of the total thing of what he released was curated out by Greenwald and his partner. So there's
Mhm.
a gigantic data trove of everything Snowden leaked that is, for all intents and purposes, under the control of Omidyar.
Sure.
Could that be his way that he's trying to tell the rest of the billionaire class, look, I have this pearl of great value. I'm willing to play the games billionaires play with all you. Let me into your club. I'm not leaking this. I'm sitting on this. Thinking out loud.
Well, with a hostile stance that the previous two administrations, well, current and previous, with their hardline stance toward Assange and Snowden, Omid Yar has to, if that's his tact and that is happening behind the scenes, he does have to be amenable to deal making at some point. So I could understand that would be why The Intercept went with Scahill and they started taking a much softer stance about specific things and kind of placating to the overall liberal climate. Because if he was going to be hostile at all, it seems like the government would be figuring out ways to immediately take a more hostile and severe stance to him and the Intercept in general. They would attempt to Assange him if he was being hostile about it. So there has to be some kind of backroom handshake already in place for that to be the case, I think.
I do too. Perhaps it serves as some sort of leverage for Midyar in anything that may come up in his negotiations with the government as a important piece of online retail and big tech meets fintech.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we can't put it past the government directly and the security agencies in particular. I mean, they just inked another deal with Bezos, a huge contract for Amazon Web Services. And I think this is just to streamline more spying and direct connections to the security firms. So we don't know if Omid Yar is willing to take a lead position on spin for DC, and then on the back end to create amenable agreements to turn over the data collected from his media operations. So there's a lot of game playing going on there right now.
I suspect you're right, and I am very curious that I haven't seen this reported on or commented on by anyone else. But besides The Intercept, there's a couple more examples we can look to. Aaron Mate jumping ship from Democracy Now!, where I believe he worked for 10 years.
Yeah,
And like The Intercept, Democracy Now! Used to be more adversarial to power, and now it is kind of another MSNBC, I would say.
it's going that direction, especially in areas of war. There's no doubt about that. And they're leaning heavy into the culture stuff.
Yeah, they used to be very strongly anti-war, and I would say that their primary difference from MSNBC is exactly the culture stuff, especially the woke stuff.
I was shocked to see Hedges go back there. Maybe it's just temporary and he needed an outlet, but I was surprised that that was the move after having his archive shut down at RT.
Oh, I haven't seen him on Democracy Now! I know he started up something with the Real News Network.
Oh, that's maybe I confused the two.
Okay. Yeah, he did have a recent appearance on Democracy Now! To talk about the extirpation of RT from YouTube.
Sure. Yeah, the Real News Network. I think you're right. That's where
Yeah,
he went to do the Hedges report.
yeah, he's got a new gig there, it seems like. And
Yeah.
another great example of people jumping ship to Substack is Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty leaving the Hill.
Yeah.
So the people know something is amiss. They're not really sure where to look, but they're hungry for objective information, as witnessed by all of those examples we just gave. And Trump was directing his appeal to exactly that unsettledness among the population when he was saying that the game is rigged, because it is.
Yeah.
And I would say that that was a bigger part of his appeal than the racism and white supremacy that blue MAGA legacy media keeps assuring us is the only basis of Trump's support.
They've really become a one-trick pony with that at this point. I mean, that's everything is racism and Putin.
Although, to be sure, it remains among us. The Buffalo shooting is evidence enough of that. But I don't think that it's as all-pervasive as blue MAGA media would have us believe. So
Sure.
even though the people remain unclear on precisely how they are being fucked each and every day of their life, they know that they are. And the powers that be are getting nervous because the people are eager to find out how. So if you'd like to leave us with any closing remarks, please jump in.
Yeah, no, you nailed it with that Obama speech. I think the most important thing that I've taken away from your work thus far on this specific issue is it's become very clear that the disinformation board is a coordinating board to streamline things and make policy pushes faster between the security agencies and the tech firms. Instead of them having numerous people to call, it's going to be Jankowicz and whoever else is heading up that board.
I think you're exactly right. She becomes a single point of contact between the presidency and big tech.
That's exactly
And
right.
big
It
media.
allows things to move much faster. It allows them to stay lighter on their feet.
Right. I think we've said enough about Nina Jankowicz and the new Disinformation Governance Board, which is trying to perpetrate upon us a disinformation governance regime.
Yeah.
In subsequent episodes of the Hardline According to Stonefruit with Mark French, let's have a look at some of the great theoreticians of ideology in the 20th century. Imbel, Althusser, three legendary post-Marxist Marxists, let us say. Internet people, this has been another episode of Hardline According to Stonefruit.